What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video and another amplifier. So this is a Harman Kardon 330B. This is not a new to me amplifier. I have worked on this in the past, but it was during the COVID era, and I didn't get to do exactly what I wanted to do with this amplifier at the time. I couldn't get every component I needed. I had to use some generic stuff, which I wasn't too happy with. Don't think it's related to what's wrong with it at the moment, but the owner basically shorted out one of the outputs and blew the fuse. And I have a feeling it's done more damage than that. So we've got to fix this thing up. We're going to change some extra components in here because these Harman Kardons are a bit of a basket case when it comes to dodgy transistors, and there's a lot of things that we need to just check over and get this thing back into service. There's nothing really that's unobtainium in this amp. It's pretty straightforward, very nicely laid out unit. About 20 watts a channel, DC coupled output. And yeah, I hope you like my new sort of setup for showing off these amplifiers. I know it's been a while since I've done a video, and I've been sort of redoing my entire setup with this lovely workbench and other things. So anyway, we're going to move this over to the less pretty workbench and dive in and see what we've got going on here. All right, so I'm all set up. I've pulled out the fuse holders on the back of the amp, and one fuse is missing, one is still intact. This amplifier does not have any sort of conventional speaker protection relay or anything like that. It just has some fuses for the output section that will blow if there's a short or whatever, but in my experience, even though those blow, it still takes out the outputs and you can kiss everything goodbye, basically. So we're just going to check the output transistors and see what we're dealing with. Dead short. Pretty much a dead short. Pretty much a dead short. So again, dead shorts. This is a pretty dirty way of doing it because it's still in circuit, but we get a general idea of what we're dealing with. So no good on that side. This side seems to be intact still. Not seeing anything on the outputs. We're going to pull them all out anyway, and we'll have a look. The emitter resistors hopefully survived. They may not have, but I don't really want to have to change them. That one's okay. And that one's okay also, and I'm assuming we're still fine on this side also. All right, so the emitter resistors are fine. God knows if the drivers or anything are damaged, but it doesn't really matter at this point because I am going to be changing pretty much everything with the parts that I wanted to put in there in the first place. So just an overview of what I did a few years ago on this amp. The outputs were used with parts that I wouldn't normally use. That's all I could get my hands on locally. I recapped the entire unit with stuff that I had in stock. We have multi-turn trimmers fitted everywhere. I redid the preamp section with all metal films instead of the old carbons to try and quieten down the preamp, because the preamp was pretty staticky in this amp, and I'm not exactly sure why. We might look into that a bit more once all the proper parts are in there. There were a ton of problematic transistors in, well, basically they're all problematic in these units. You should replace everything. but I was able to get the KSC 1845s, I believe they are, and replace all the ones in the preamp and a couple in the power amp section. So they're done, but we still have to do these ones and these ones here, which is fine. We're going to change the outputs, so we shouldn't have any snafus or anything weird happening because we're pretty much shotgunning the entire amp. The power supply cap was replaced with a much larger unit at the time. That hasn't caused any problems. I just wanted something that physically fitted in that position, and it's done the job up till now, so we're not going to worry about that. And obviously I have replacement fuses as well. So I'm going to remove these outputs and then we'll come back and have a look and see if they are actually completely nuked. All right, outputs are out. We have dead shorts on every leg. Emitter to collector, base, everything. These are gonzo. So screw those, we're not messing with them. These ones are okay, but these are just sort of generics as well, which we are not going to be reusing anyway, because I will not use different transistors on each channel. They must be matched. When I say matched, I mean they must at least be the same type of transistor. So we're not touching those. I got a set from Mauser. These are MGE 15028Gs. I would have preferred to go one of the higher end ones. These will still do the job, but stock shortages are still a problem. So we're using these. And I'll just go back to the amp and I'll show you what else we're going to do. Okay, so with all the outputs removed, which were sitting in these locations, we've got to refit those. So these are getting changed, which we've got put aside. And these two here, like I said earlier, and that's pretty much everything. We still have a lot of carbon resistors in the power amp, but I'm going to leave those because I haven't really had any issues with noise in the power amp section, just in this preamp backwards section, which we'll have a look at when we do some power testing and everything. These are thermal compensation. I think they're diodes or thermistors or something along those lines. Haven't looked into this that closely. Got to be really careful with these. They can break quite easily, so don't manipulate them too much. Just get them out of the way and don't screw with them anymore. So I'm going to just get all this ripped out, put in the new outputs, and we will see what happens. All right, a little bit of an update. All these components are changed out here. Got all that done first. Now I'm reinstalling these outputs, which are a real pain in the ass on this amplifier. It might be easy if you had this whole heatsink assembly removed, but I really don't like doing this part. So basically, you've got to install your new outputs. You've got like a metal washer on the top. You've got a bolt that goes through. You've got a plastic insulator on the back and a nut, and you've also got the thermal interface pad that has to align on this heatsink as well. Normally it would be a mica insulator with thermal paste. I don't recommend it because the thermal paste will smear everywhere trying to reinstall this this whole setup. So basically you have to get it through. Oh god, this is not focusing. And then you've got to put the insulator in the back side of the heatsink with a locking nut. These are all new mounting hardware because the ones that were in here were really corroded on this when I did it. So you need a really nice driver to hold it in place, and then you've got to do it up on the back side there. Not a fan of this. It's just really annoying. And then you got to try and line up all the legs, drop the output transistor into place while pushing it against this heatsink and securing it without shorting anything out. Not fun. Anyway, I'll get all these done and we'll come back. All right, so we're about ready to go. All the outputs are installed. I just need to make sure that we don't have any shorts to ground on these outputs because they need to be insulated. So all these mounting bolts should have nothing showing. And we don't. We have nothing there, which is excellent. And I don't think we have anything to worry about. So I think we're about ready to fire this thing up. And hopefully we see nothing from it. No smoke. And then we can have a look at the DC offset and the bias. So yeah, let's get this thing up and running. All right, so here we are. Everything is looking really good. I've got it fully loaded at the moment. I've just got a bit of a fan blowing over the output section just to keep this thing a little bit cool because this is a pretty heavy load for it to deal with. Looking at about 22 watts per channel. Very happy with how it's looking. I've done the idle current already and that was pretty good. Main adjustments for this unit is just the idling current, which was 8 millivolts. That is very, very sensitive on this particular unit. I don't know if that's because of all the new transistors that have been put in, but it is very easy to knock this thing way out of adjustment. So you've got to be very gentle with that one. DC balance adjustment, which is what I've been doing at the moment, which is just to send it into clipping and make sure that the rising and falling waveform is pretty much symmetrical. And as you can see, we're looking pretty good there. So I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, so I'm going to just sort of let this thing cool down, stress it, well, not stress it, but just let it load for a little while, and then I'll clean up the bench and I'll just give you an overview of everything that's been done on this unit before we seal it up and send it on its way. Alrighty, all done. Just thought I'd give you a quick look around this unit before I seal it back up. Some like this work was done quite a while ago, but I got to check everything over again. So we have new filter capacitors pretty much everywhere. There's a 4.7 microfarad bypass capacitor in parallel with the main filter cap down here. I replaced some of the resistors quite a while ago in the signal path for the auxiliary, which are metal films and precision resistors, just to try and get rid of some of that noise floor that this unit really struggled with. There is all new rectifier diodes down here, and they're uprated as well. I find that the newer stuff is a lot quieter, so I always do that. More new filter capacitors here, and also replaced the speaker terminals with not so much like the banana, I guess I call the banana jacks, but just the sockets. These are nice and cheap and decent quality and easy to fit. They don't need much space on the inside, so I tend to go for these because I don't have to go like really far into the chassis, and they're quite easy to mount. I left the normal ones for the B speaker terminals because it is a decent amount of work, and an amplifier of this power level doesn't really warrant massive amounts of work put into it. Oh yes, and also a brand new power cord with heavy strain relief added as well, so cannot pull that out, and new grounding that's soldered directly to the chassis, not bolted to anything. I tend to replace power cords on pretty much all the gear I do, and that is not moving whatsoever, and it hasn't budged since I did it. Top side, like I said, all new transistors in the preamp and the power amp, new trim pots, new capacitors, the big supply capacitor here. I also did the phono amp board with all new capacitors, and those noisy transistors are gone there as well. I left the tuners alone. I don't use tuners, and I find most people who run these things don't use them anymore either, so I don't poke the bear. I just leave everything alone and just focus on the things that people are actually going to use in these units. And like I said, this is not a high ticket amplifier, so the amount of work that's already gone into this is already ridiculous. No one's going to pay for this sort of work. I did this for a friend, and it's just going home now, and I'll get to enjoy it for a few days, and that's about it for this unit. Everything's reassembled, just going through some music, doing some testing, and they're great little amplifiers, these. They're not everything that I like in an amplifier. I personally think the preamp on this is too noisy. It's got too much noise floor for me. You can definitely hear it with sensitive headphones, which is my usual deal. If you like a bit of the vintage background noise with a bit of dirt to your music, then you're set here. But this amp does have jumpers between the preamp and the main amp inputs, so you can bypass the entire preamp and feed straight into the power amp on this. And if you do that, this thing is clean. There is nothing to worry about whatsoever, and it is a great sounding amp once you bypass all the controls and everything. And unfortunately, there is no bypass switch built into this model. But yeah, great unit. It's working really well, and nice to see it back in service and going back to its home again. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.